Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Today is Dress to Impress Day, so I am sporting some nifty sunglasses. I have some lipstick on, and I have a nice blazer featuring the Purcell Running Club shirt underneath. Running is pretty impressive, I must say. Anyways, I'm here to do another read aloud today out of Journey. Yesterday we read chapters 4 and 5. Today I'm going to be reading chapters 6 and 7 to you. But before we get started, I wanted to remind you about the rest of the days for Spirit Week this week, our virtual Spirit Week here at Purcell Middle School. So today is obviously Dress to Impress Day. Tomorrow, I think yesterday I called it Wacky Tourist Day, but it's actually Tacky Tourist Day. So that will be tomorrow. And then on Friday, we are doing black and white colored clothing day. So that will be Friday. Okay, very nice days. So I also wanted to do a shout out to anyone that's listening to this. I've posted on my Google Classroom that Amazon is now offering all of their children's audiobooks are free to listen to. So feel free to check that out. I'm posting the links on my Google Classroom pages, but if you just Google it, you should be able to find it if you're not on any of my Google Classroom pages, or give me a shout out and I can hook you up with that link so that you can listen to those stories. I think that's a great opportunity, especially for kids who may have trouble reading harder text, but they want us to listen to them. So it's a really great resource out there. So I'm going to start reading chapters 6 and 7 out of Journey. Here we go. Chapter 6. I don't believe you're sick, says Kat, standing over my bed like an umpire over home plate. And if you are sick, you're glad of it. You like us to bring you soup and ginger ale. I have a sore throat, I tell her, pulling the covers under my chin. Let's see, says Kat, trying to pry my mouth open. I can hear Grandma in the kitchen practicing scales on the flute. I have a temperature, too, I say. How many blankets do you have here? 1, 2, 3, a quilt, a bedspread? Journey, you've got 5 blankets, and it's summer. You may turn into a butterfly. Kat, Mama tore up our pictures. Yes? You knew? Why am I the last to know anything? You know things, Journey. You just don't want to believe them. You believe what you want. Kat, in a sudden motion, whips my covers off. Kat! She lets the window shades snap up, and sun clatters into the room. I put my hands over my eyes. You're not sick, Journey, says Kat, standing at the window. You're hiding out. Grandma was surprised to see me dressed. Journey, are you feeling better? Kat made me get up. Grandma smiled. She put her flute on my burro. Kat is a woman of action. She doesn't believe much in introspection. Introspection? Grandma sat on my bed. What you've been doing in here the past 2 days, thinking mostly about yourself. I looked up quickly to see if this wasn't an insult, but Grandma was looking out to the garden where Kat was hoeing between the rows. Kat believes that if she keeps busy, all the things that bother her will go away, said Grandma. Does that work? Grandma turned to look at me. Not entirely, no more than thinking, but you will notice, she added, that my garden is twice the size it was last year. I looked out at the rows of lettuce and radishes, the fern-like tops of carrots. Grandma had turned up more grass this year, and she had even planted corn that stood stomach-high to me. We watched Kat finish a row, then stand back, wiping the back of her hand over her forehead. She lifted her shoulders suddenly, then began working again. Grandma leaned against the window frame and looked out, past Kat in the garden, past the meadows. Her face looked sad. She misses Mama, too. Aunt Lancy and Uncle Minor had moved away and they visited sometimes, but Mama had stayed on to live with Grandma, Mama and Papa, and Mama was the youngest. We all do the best we can, you know, said Grandma. Your sister and I garden ourselves into madness. She looked at me. You think yourself into a sore throat. She sighed and gestured toward the barn. And your grandfather takes pictures. Grandfather, his camera around his neck, was prowling along the stone wall outside, his eye on Kat. Through the window we could see him say something. We could see Kat turn with a surprised look like a deer startled in the garden, as Grandfather took her picture. Watch now, Journey, Grandma whispered. That old buzzard is going to take a picture of us. How do you know? I whispered back. He didn't even look this way. Oh, yes, he did. I saw his eyes roll to the side. I am the smartest woman in this room. Why are we whispering? I whispered. Grandma began to laugh, and she put her arm around me. I smiled, and we both looked out. Suddenly, Grandfather whirled and aimed his camera at us in the window. Such a noodle, said Grandma, laughing as he took our picture. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Grandma? What? Why did Mama do it? The pictures. Grandma shrugged. I can't speak for Liddy. I never could, Journey, and it wouldn't be fair to you if I did. Then I said, I'll have to ask her when I see her. Grandma looked at me a quick look. She reached out to smooth my hair. I hope you get to do that, Journey. I really do. Grandma went to the dresser and picked up her flute. He shouldn't have told me, I said suddenly. Grandfather shouldn't have told me about the pictures. But, Journey, Grandma said softly, you asked him. Grandma paused for a moment to look at the old picture of Mama that leaned against the dresser. Funny, is it, how we are sometimes angry at the wrong person? She gave her head a little shake as if shaking off a fly, then she went out the door. You, I whispered to the picture. I could have a sore throat. I could have a temperature. I leaned my elbows on the dresser and peered into Mama's face. Do you hear me? Chapter 7. And then the cat came. After the rains, when Grandfather and I were silent and uneasy with each other, and the lawn grew too long, and June bugs threw themselves against the lamplit screens, I heard the soft thump as the cat jumped up to my sill. The cat stared at me, its face like a pansy, and then, without claws, it lifted a paw and hit the window screen. The tiniest of sounds. Very carefully I lifted the screen, and the cat walked inside, across my desk, and settled on my bed as if it were home. As if the cat were someone come back in disguise. Almost at once the cat slept. Slowly I backed out of the room, racing to the kitchen. Cat! Grandma looked up. Your sister's not here, Journey. Do you want something? No. I knew how Grandma felt about cats. Behind her, Grandfather was standing, leaning against the counter, stirring coffee. No, Grandma, thanks. Good night. Good night, then, said Grandma, threading a needle in the light. I looked at Grandfather, and he looked back at me. Taking a sip of his coffee, his eyes narrowed against the steam. He turned his head to one side as if he were getting a different view of me. I lifted my shoulders, took a breath, and beckoned to him, putting a finger to my lips. His eyebrows rose. After a moment, he put down his coffee, silently following me down the hallway to my room. What is it? He said at my bedroom door. Look, I whispered, pulling his arm. I pointed. Oh my, whispered Grandfather. He smiled. Look at that, all tuckered out. Slowly he walked to the bed. The cat stretched, looked up at him, then curled up again. Whose cat is it? Asked Grandfather. I was silent. Grandfather quickly looked down at me. Journey, he warned. No, you know your grandma's not fond of cats. She loves her birds. I love this cat, I said. He tapped on my window screen. I think he's mine. Do not, said Grandfather, whispering fiercely. Do not name this cat. I knew the family rule. Do not name an animal or you'll have to take care of it. If you name it, it's yours. He tapped on my screen and walked right in and went to sleep. I went on, just like he lives here, and he does. I put out my hand and stroked the cat. He put his paws around my hand, hugging me to him. See, I whispered. Grandfather bent down. There's blood here, Journey. See, a little trail on the floor. Grandfather ran his hands over the cat, who peered at him through slit eyes. Here it is, a little cut on his foot. Grandfather took out his handkerchief and blotted the cat's left paw. Suddenly the cat reached over and took Grandfather's finger in his teeth. I held my breath as Grandfather and the cat stared at each other. After a moment, Grandfather smiled. You are something, he said to the cat. And to prove it, the cat let go of his finger, turned over, and went back to sleep. What is going on here? Grandma's voice made Grandfather jump. The cat didn't move. Oh, for heaven's sake, Marcus! My sister appeared suddenly behind Grandma. Her face lighted up when she saw the cat. Oh, she turned to me. Have you named him yet? Marcus, said Grandma warningly, her lips pressed tightly together. Now, Lottie, said Grandfather, this is an injured animal. We have to be humane here. You know how I feel about cats, said Grandma, and cats are not humane to birds. We'll put a bell on him, I said. 2 bells, Grandma, please. Grandma's face was stern. I turned to Grandfather. I need this cat. My own words startled me, and Grandfather cleared his throat. Actually, Lottie, it's unfortunate, I know, but Journey has named him already. I stared at Grandfather. Grandma saw my surprise. Really, she said, folding her arms across her chest. And what would that name be? Yes, said Grandfather. His eyes roamed the room. His name is, Grandfather looked at the vase of peonies by the window. His name is Bloom. Isn't that what you call him, Journey? Yes, I nodded. Oh, push, said Grandma, half smiling. You just made that up, old man. You might just as well have said peony. Lottie, said Grandfather. Journey knows that peony is no name for a cat. The screen opened and Cooper poked his head in. I saw the lights. He climbed in, closing the screen behind him, and then he saw the cat. Cooper peered at Grandfather, at my sister leaning against the wall, and at Grandma with her arms still folded. Finally, he looked at me. Of course you named him, he said, making Grandfather's lips twitch. Bloom, I said. I'll get the camera, said Grandfather. As it turned out, the name Bloom fit the cat well. In Grandma's words, Bloom was about to burst into a flower. In Grandfather's words, he's a she, she's pregnant, you're going to be a papa. Grandma pretended anger at the idea of more than one cat, but I thought that she'd known the moment she first saw Bloom. And Bloom, if she loved anyone, loved Grandma. She ran to her in the morning with a small, eager sound of welcome. She brought sodden and well-chewed mice to the doorstep, waiting proudly for Grandma to run through all her words of disgust. She sat beside Grandma on the living room couch at night, watching Grandma closely. We tied a bell on Bloom so she wouldn't catch birds, but Bloom would not wear it, managing to chew it off. Late into the night, we heard the sound of Bloom batting up and down the hallways of the house before she came to my bed to sleep. But as far as I knew, Bloom never caught a bird. If she did, she never brought it to Grandma's doorstep. She knows, said Cat admiringly. She's the most intelligent cat I've ever known, added Cooper, who had never known any cat well. Intelligent enough to know your grandma would kill her and toss her on the compost heap. I knew better. I knew that Grandma and Bloom had a secret life of their own. Once, hidden in the pantry, I heard what Bloom heard each day from Grandma. "Oh, no, you filthy little cannonball! Take that mouse away, you wretch!" Then whispered, "You are one splendid girl, the best in all the world. Would you like a treat?" One morning I borrowed Grandpa's camera and stalked them in the garden, and I took a picture of Grandma leaning over the onions to whisper to Bloom. Bloom's tail high, her face lifted to Grandma's, almost a kiss. Days later, when Grandfather saw the picture, he grew very quiet, and when I looked up at him, his eyes were wet. He pinned the picture on the wall of the barn, and we stood next to each other, not speaking for a long time. Then we had the shortest conversation of our lives so far. "Lottie needs that cat," said Grandfather. I nodded. "The camera knows," I said. And that is the end of Chapter 7. Please join me tomorrow as we continue this read aloud. As I mentioned before, please be sure to share with me any ideas you have for future read alouds, different things you might be interested in hearing, and I'll see what I have on my bookshelf and what I can share with you. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. I hope you are all staying healthy and you're staying home, and that I see you very soon. Bye, guys.